Hello again from the humid woods of Pennsylvania. Um, I know nobody really watches my 1200 GS videos, but I'm making this before I rip the bike apart. Um, I just got back from what now was a 36,000 mile trip over the last 15 months. Obviously, I had some gaps in there. The Honda BDR trip was actually in the middle of that, but this is actually, I got back yesterday, and this is the first day in 15 months that this bike has been back here in PA from where I left. So we went everywhere, down the East Coast, across the South, Gulf Coast, deserts, LA, Vegas, back to Texas, San Francisco, Baja, Death Valley, Pacific Northwest, Alaska. Just got back from there. Rode pretty much every major road in Alaska. Um, Western Canada, back through, BC, Alberta, Jasper, Icefields, Banff, Glacier. Um, didn't go through Yellowstone, but did Beartooth Pass, and then blazed back east over the last couple of days. So this is a 56,000 mile update on the GS. The last one of these that I did was actually in California last June, I think, after only 7,000 miles into this trip. So we've been through a heck of a lot more since then. So I'm going to just go over everything, what worked, what didn't. A lot has changed since the last update, but a lot has not changed. And so, I think overall, my before I embarked on this last set of stuff over really the last 4 or 5 months, Baja, Alaska, etc. Really since March of this year. It's June now, and I'm recording this. I've done what 15,000 miles. So, going into that, I was thinking the GSA was a little bit big for the kind of riding that I wanted to do. I was thinking of downsizing. I mean, I have 4 bikes sitting around here now, including this one. I've got the CRF, I've got an old 650 BMW, I've got the T7 in there with only 200 miles on it. But, I have to say, after this experience, I'm I am re in love with the GSA. Um, it was perfect for what I did, and even carrying probably 100 plus, maybe 150 pounds. I don't even know how much gear I ultimately had on the back, including all the cases and everything. It got me up to Prudhoe Bay. It got me to Cabo. There weren't that many places where there was off-road stuff that I wanted to do that I couldn't do. And a lot of that was, I could probably cut 75 pounds of weight off of this if I really wanted to and increase my skill enough to make it work. So, I'm going to tear this apart, get it nicely, refurbished and cleaned and do a major service. But then we're going to keep going. And this is the bike of choice for the kind of travel that I like to do, which essentially is long, long days. I think over the last 2 weeks, I averaged 400 miles a day, I think, on the riding days. That was two rest days. I know 400 isn't long to some of the true iron butt crowd, but, for riding 6 to 8 hours a day for almost 3 or 4 months straight over great distances, that's the kind of riding that I think I like to do. And for my purposes, this is the best tool for the job. Also, it got me home, and I beat the shit out of it. Like, I completely abused this thing. I was going at, high speeds on extremely crappy roads, And yeah, there were a couple things that happened that I'll get to, but it didn't let me down at all. Um, and I think most of the things that failed were my own fault. So I just kind of wanted to set it up as it was. This is almost exactly how I arrived back home. And we'll just kind of go front to back like I always do. So tires, my God, I've been through so many tires on this thing in the last year and a half. These are the Dunlop Trail Max Missions. I think overall for on-road, off-road, these are the tires that I used in the Rawhide Off-Road School, which I liked a lot. You know, I think the first 500 miles on these is always just shit. It feels like the bike is very kind of, it wants to tip over almost is what it feels like. But once you get past that first 500 miles, I actually think they're a pretty great tire. When they start to wear out, they wear out badly. Like, you know, they feel extremely unstable, especially in turns when they go. People are getting 12 to 15,000 miles out of these. I'm getting 9,000 miles out of them. Weight, I guess, I don't know. The front, I did hit a pothole, I guess, pretty hard and busted a band inside and got a death wobble. So this is actually a newer tire. So this is my second front really in the last 6,000 miles. Back has been good. Actually, the back was good on the previous set as well. My favorite tire for this bike still, unfortunately, is the Pirelli Scorpion Trail 2. That bike or that tire is a dream on the road. I love riding that hard. It just doesn't last. I think out of my last my last set with this setup, going through shitty roads in Western Canada and Alaska, I got, you know, I mean, I took them off early to put these on, but the tire probably only had 1,500 miles left in it, and so I probably got 3,000 out of them, which is nuts. I would put them on again just because I love riding them so much. I had the Anarchy Adventures on. I spent whatever the heck it was, 700 bucks putting them on. I took them off after 200 miles and I got rid of them. I hope that shop was able to reuse them, but I couldn't handle the noise. They just made a screaming sound and horrible, horrible. I do want to try the Motaz Tractionator. I'll probably try that next, maybe. Actually, no, I'll probably put the Pirellis on next. So that's tires. You know, I did learn that my spokes in the front were not tightened correctly. They were all sort of different. Maybe that was what led to the blow or the band being busted. I'm not really sure. Bill Ness and Anchorage helped me out with that and fix the spokes up. In the rear, they were fine. You know, stock adventure screen. I got this, the extension on it. That's still worked really well. I'm gonna do something to create a wider profile on the wind because there's certain conditions, especially with a crosswind, where it's just too loud for me and I'm getting like ringing in my ears again. I want to mount plastic squares basically to here, to each of the mirrors to angle wind. It sounds crazy, but I think that's going to work for me. I still like these Aeroflow, you know, wind, whatever they are, wider things. I have the Nav 6 on here. Still hate it. They updated it, and now it's even worse because the background is black instead of white, so it's even harder to see. This X mount phone mount, which people keep saying got to do something else. Sorry, like this went the whole Dalton Highway, and my phone never flew off. I'm using the X mount forever. All these other things, forget it. Like this has worked totally fine as long as you glue inside the rubber nub things. You'll see these are new Barkbusters that I put on just because I figured I'd be doing more off-road. You know, these are the VPS that you can vary the deflection. I was going to put the Storms on, but actually there's a reason I didn't. But I actually like these. I really like the stock deflectors, but they just don't do anything for protection. And I was going to put those, I think it's SW Motec has the cages that you can put around them, because I did like that the wind protection on them, but this is okay. The tank bag, the zipper failed. I got that actually re-sewn in LA. All the zipper pulls are basically breaking off, and I'm replacing them with just these little pulls that I got at REI. The buckles have broken. All that said, this is still a great tank bag. I'm gonna keep using it. I'm gonna replace the buckles. I really like this tank bag a lot. Apparently the yellowing in the screen on the top actually is just, you can wash it out. Interesting. This was the Valentine 1 that normally mounts here. This is the Gen 2 V1. Has Bluetooth built in now, which is great. So I don't really like the display because it's this purple that makes it hard to see. But with the Bluetooth, getting the alerts in your helmet works pretty well. I have this hydration system now in here, thanks to my friend Peter gave me this idea of basically, I had originally put a Camelback bladder in here, a 2-liter bladder, and I would only fill it halfway because it would take up too much room. But it really, because this gets so hot in here, I think the plastic started to melt and stink, and so the water always tasted like shit. So I put an Osprey 1.5-liter bladder in there, and now I can fill that up all the way. And I have the insulated tube from the Camelback, and then a piece of Velcro, and another piece of Velcro, and it just Velcros there, and I can drink while I'm riding. I actually have been using it a lot. It works great. And then I keep other water in there and stuff anyway. These side pouches, I have my bear spray in here for Alaska and, you know, some other things. They work well. Now that I found a better way to mount, I just added an extension of the Velcro. You'll see here, this was a fuel bag that I took along because I figured we were going to be in long distances, either in Baja or in Dalton Highway especially. There's a 240-mile stretch at one point, which for me, I thought it was like the edge of my range. Lesson learned, at higher speeds, you know, or headwinds, the mileage on this bike goes to shit. Like I was down to 29 miles a gallon with headwinds at higher speeds. However, if you just putter along on a dirt road, you're getting 45 miles a gallon. So you're getting well over 300 miles of range, and you can keep an eye on that pretty easily. So I filled that fuel bag once, but I've been fucking carrying it around now for, what, a year for some reason. So I'm not gonna take that along again on this bike. It doesn't need it. There's nowhere that I would ever go, I think, that I would need auxiliary fuel. These front pouches here, you know, they're not good. They were very expensive, and I'm sorry, but like the seals don't work. They get dust in them, a lot of dust in them. And there just isn't much that you can put up there in a place that's gonna get a lot of debris hitting it. They're covered in bug juice. You know, I was keeping like spare coffee in there, like hot cans of cold coffee, which would of course get hot, but just as emergency caffeine. But it's like you open it up and it's filthy. And so, you know, on the Dalton Highway, I open it up and it's covered in dust. I'm not drinking that shit because it's like, oh, there's calcium chloride dust all over my coffee. Like, so I have a poncho in there, which of course is now full of dust. I don't know, like, I don't really have, because they're not secure, you can't lock them. You can't put anything in, and they're weirdly shaped. They're these triangles. So you can't put anything in there that's important. You can't put anything in there that can't get wet. I'm not carrying, in all this shit, I'm not carrying much that can go in there that I don't care if it gets stolen, and I don't care if it gets dirty. So literally what I was keeping in there was rain covers for my gloves, which I used one time because the other gloves that I have are waterproof. So I don't know what, like, theoretically it should be good, but I don't know. I do not know what to do with them, and they were so expensive. The seat is still this Wunderlich seat, which is amazing. It's getting a little bit saggy in the back, which means it's putting a little bit more pressure in the front, which I don't particularly like, because it's like prostate-y area. So I'm not sure what to do about that. Maybe the rear needs to be built up. It's okay for the most part, but that's the only thing that is a slight gripe with the seat. These, you know, I was told don't go to Alaska without camping gear. This is all the camping gear, all here and some in the bottom, which I didn't use one time. So luckily REI has a return policy because I'm going to take it all back. But these were actually really good to have along because before that, these were empty and I was just running with the cases. And I just had these jammed in the bottom of the case. So having that expanded storage, especially for a really long trip, was great. And they're waterproof and they work really well and they're easy to carry. So thumbs up on those. I have this just laying here. This is the BMW banana suit because my Aerostitch was not staying waterproof, even though I re-waterproofed it, which is a bummer. This is such a pain in the ass to put on. I'm not going to carry a one-piece rain suit again. Yellow bag, the famous yellow bag, the Wolfman bag. This is my backrest / all my clothes, which worked well, amazing. You know, I still hate my GV case just because of the it needs a key to open it. However, because I just that's just a silly design. However, it did stay waterproof and it didn't break off on the Dalton, which I expected it to break because I've known other people who had their rear cases come off in heavy off-road. So I think it's actually kind of like there's a thumbs up for that. That was very unexpected. I still like this style case. Like I don't want a deep, narrow case. I like this shape. And I also, you probably can't see it. You can't see it, but I have I put a thing inside the lid. That's a little thing where I keep my national parks map and stickers that I want to put on later and stuff like that. So you know, this actually held up. So I'm not going to change it. But I still hate the fact that there's no way to open it without needing the key. So, you know, I'm not going to go through all the gear because I went through most of this stuff before. You know, I think it's probably important to talk about some of the things that I guess went well and didn't go well though, and stuff that I shipped home. The things that I shipped home, heated pants, which turned out you know, it didn't get that cold in Alaska, so didn't need the heated pants. I shipped them home. The heated top, the Gerbing top and gloves, the controller did fail. So I borrowed a controller from a friend, and then you know, they warrantied the controller, which was great, and sent me a new one. That's like the dial-E controller. I think that now there's controllers that are wireless, which probably would work better. You know, I started packing things in compression sacks in here. The compression sacks worked really well. You know, in one of the compression sacks, I had a cooling vest. I'm not sold in the cooling vest thing, especially under the Aerostitch. It's bulky and it's swampy, and I don't feel like you get enough cooling with the airbag vest that I've been wearing over top. The airbag vest cinches everything down and you don't get the flow over it. And also the cooling vest sort of drips down into your riding shorts. I just wear shorts and bike shorts underneath, and then you're just sitting in water. Or wet pants, really. And so I don't know about that. On the other hand, what I used to do is soak my shirt and soak my sleeves, like wear LD Comfort sleeves, but they dry out really fast. So, and maybe some of this was just the fact that like I was riding in summer weather the last couple of weeks in an Aerostitch, which I know a lot of people do it. That's not for me. So maybe this isn't an issue. Okay. What else in the gear? You know, I mean, I talked about, I think, a lot of my gloves and gear. I mean, the Aerostitch, I guess I could mention, I don't have it out here. It's the R3, the Roadcrafter one piece. It's completely fallen apart now, and I guess that's just expected with all the miles. The zippers have failed. The Velcro has failed. The waterproofing, even though I re-waterproofed it, has failed, especially in the arms. It just goes right through. You know, it got me up there and back, but it's really fallen apart. So I'm going to have that completely refurbished. I would wear it again as a winter suit. I'd probably wear it again to do an Alaska trip if I was confident in the waterproofing. But otherwise, I don't know. My boots, which were those Alpine Stars Adventure Gore-Tex boots, the waterproofing failed on those, which is really, really irritating. And CD's customer service is a piece of shit. And so, and I re-waterproofed them. It must be coming through the stitching. So those are a giant thumbs down. They're only a year old and my feet were getting wet. So I had to buy boot covers. I bought Built brand boot covers, which are also a piece of shit. I got them from Cycle Gear. They were only like 30 bucks, but within 2 or 3 wearings, the soles, which are rubber soles, broke through holes, and I had to tape up the outside. Luckily, Cycle Gear warranted them and gave me a new pair to get me home, but junk, absolute junk. One thing I didn't mention, obviously, this was a big deal that everyone heard about on my trip. The Dalton Highway and the calcium chloride stuff, the dust or whatever, and it turns to cement, destroys seals. So fork seals went, steering damper went, front shock went, maybe rear. I don't know. I don't like it doesn't. It's not leaking in an obvious way, but I'm gonna get that rebuilt anyway. So I switched to a tractive front suspension. Had the fork seals redone. I have to get a new steering damper. I really liked the stock suspension, but it was $2,200 to get it replaced, and I couldn't get it quickly the way I needed it. And so the tractive was $1,000 cheaper than that, well, $900 cheaper than that. I'm struggling to get the feel that I had in the stock suspension back with the tractive, and I think that's just a matter of playing around with it. But you know, and it's ESA compatible, but in soft, it's not soft enough, and in hard riding, it is not confident enough. So I don't know what's going on there. Hopefully I can get that sorted out. The back, I think I'm just gonna have rebuilt, because it's cheaper to rebuild, and just in the situation I was in, there was no way to get the front suspension rebuilt when I needed it. So that'll be interesting to see how that all plays out with the tractive front and a rebuilt rear. Might end up needing to respring the rear because obviously I tend to carry a lot of gear. So I sent back my locks and stuff like that. I'm not that worried about the bike being stolen, and even if it is what it is. I'm more worried about just like the inconvenience, especially if it was broken into or whatever. So like a little cable lock doesn't really do anything. And I'm not carrying a 100-pound chain because whatever, if someone really wants the bike, they're gonna get it anyway. But I've been carrying a cover, and in the situations where, I don't feel like taking the cases off or whatever and carrying them into a hotel, I've been covering the bike with a cheap cover that I got from Cycle Gear, and I feel okay about that. It's a full cover and it flops around, which is a little bit annoying. And it takes up a decent amount of room in the case. The BMW half cover apparently fits this bike perfectly, but it says BMW on it, which is like, why are you advertising what's under it? But I have been carrying a cover, which is interesting, because that's not something I've ever done. So that's my only real security. I guess that's about it that's notable. I think for going forward, at least what's next for this bike and whatever, I'm in the middle of an Iron Butt National Parks Gold trip. So that's California, Alaska, Maine, and Florida. So after this maintenance run is done, I'm going to head back out and do that. I'm going to go much lighter weight because I don't need the camping gear, and there's just certain things, like I don't need the winter gear, so I can strip a lot of this stuff down. So I might play around. I have Wolfman. I might play around. I have Wolfman side cases, soft cases that I might put on just to see. I don't really have a problem with the hard cases. They're working fine. But just to see how the bike feels that much lighter. And I was going to change the rear case just because I hate that key thing, but it's actually held up in a good way, knock on wood. So, ultimately, there's not a whole lot that I'm going to change for the next round. I think it's more just like make a couple of little shifts and fix some of the things that are broken. One thing that I didn't mention. I ran most of the Alaska trip with, I think they're buried in here. I'll get them out because it's worth noting. These Rocks Hippo Hands. That's not what they are, but Hippo Hands is a brand. These are the Rocks gauntlets, and they go over the hand guards. Uh, and I love them. You know, they are falling apart, which is very annoying because I've only had them on for 2 or 3 months. Like all of this elastic is going. And the mounting system was kind of shitty. Like there's these two little holes and I had to run wire through the holes around the bark buster just to hold them in place. They didn't fit correctly. There's a tension band kind of plastic thing that goes in here to keep them open, but actually they're too open because then you get water in them. So I took those out, and they also don't fit correctly. Like there's not enough space to get around the mirror with them in. However, all that said, with the heated grips, this and my regular kind of like either the summer glove or the winter glove, and this, I put the heated gloves on one time since I put these on. And I didn't even really need them. They keep the water off. They keep your hands warm. They are great, and they pack down pretty small. I would get them again. And I will use them again. I'm just bummed that they're falling apart here, but this edge really should have been reinforced and was not. I'm not sure there's much I can do about that. Maybe I can tape the hell out of it. I don't know. So that's a thumbs up. This is one of the compression sacks, by the way, that from REI. REI was a good lifesaver for many reasons on this trip. So yeah, I think that's about it. You know, so what do I want to do coming up? I mean, like, I think my plan is to finish that Iron Butt trip. That's not going to be much. It's a couple more weeks to go and get to all those places, do the maintenance, all that. And then, you know, I expect to ship the bike to Europe and continue touring there. I'm not really going to be doing any off-road, so I guess I'm going to keep running those Pirellis for that. I would love, honestly though, after the experience that I had on the Dalton and whatever, I would love to do more off-road stuff. I mean, I would go to soft luggage. I don't know that the adventure size is right for me at my experience level. I think I would probably go to a regular GS if that was in the cards. You know, I have this like fantasy of doing a lightweight GS build that's more off-road focused, and so I'll probably do that at some point. Oh, one other thing, just sort of on that note. These, the Ricochet guards, I met somebody in California who said, you know, had he had those on, it would have saved him $4,000 because he had a stone go through his engine case. And I thought that would be a good idea. They're like $130 to protect them in that way. And so I made a note to buy them. And of course, I dropped the bike in Mexico and it was fine. I just scuffed the hell out of the engine case. And I don't care, obviously, about the cosmetics of this thing. But it was a good reminder that that kind of protection would be useful. And so I'm glad to have those on now. Again, I'm not doing that much off-road with this anymore, at least for the foreseeable future. But I think that was a good and cheap investment. I have been running the fog lights all the time now, and there's such a noticeable difference between how visible I am with them and without them. I'm not sure why I didn't really run them before consistently, but yeah, that's something I've been doing. So I actually like the factory fog lights. They don't stay adjusted, which is annoying. I'm not sure why they move, but it is what it is. I think that's about it. Yeah. Yeah, it was a great traveling companion. You know, I think that the beauty of the GS and the GSA in this case is you can do long distance touring, you can do sporty riding, and you can do off-road, and you've got a super tanker situation where you can do the huge distances without worrying about your fuel. I ran 87 in this for a bunch of places that I couldn't find premium gas. You notice it. It does retard the throttle in a noticeable way, but then you put premium back in and then it's fine. So, you know, and again, like my only complaint really with the whole thing would be weight. But again, you know, you're adding fuel, weight, and I have a ton of luggage that, you know, I need to, if that mattered more for an off-road trip, I just wouldn't carry that much stuff. And so I don't have a huge complaint with weight, and actually just having now had this many miles under my belt, and this is a low model, so it's not a problem to reach the ground for me, but I don't really, you know, I don't mind having a giant bike. I really don't. And even in Dalton, when like we ran all the way up there and back, and I didn't drop any luggage off. I took the full load out. And you know, there were a couple of sketchy areas, but overall it was fine. And that's the kind of riding I like to do. That's the kind of dirt riding I like to do. Like, I would not take this on a technical single track kind of thing anyway. Like, that's what the Honda is for. That's not even what the Honda's for. Like, that's not the kind of riding I want to do yet, if ever. So yeah. GS love renewed. Moral of the story.